And I'm afraid that's going to happen. I think the euro could well get wiped out by this. In fact, I can't see how the euro can survive this coming credit crunch. It is a very serious issue. Now, on that basis, you could say that the dollar's trade weighted would go through the roof. But, this is not good news. They've got a problem because they've lost control over interest rates. I mean, to put it bluntly, it's no longer under their control.
In this video, financial expert Alasdair MacLeod discusses the looming credit crisis and its potential impact on central banks. MacLeod highlights the vulnerability of the euro and the loss of control over interest rates. He warns of over-leveraged businesses and banks, indicating potential difficulties and huge losses. MacLeod also emphasizes the negative equity situation of central banks and the challenges they face in recapitalization. He suggests that the current system is flawed and may lead to the collapse of the euro. Now let's head over and listen to Alasdair.
And as problems mount, in the underlying economy, as we've described, the effect of interest rates on over-leveraged businesses, and also on the banks, who have to shoulder the losses, if these very, very big companies like Thames Water are not rescued somehow, they're going to be huge, great losses for the banks. Banks are going to get into difficulties because they're extremely highly leveraged. And if you look at the share prices of the global systemically important banks in the Eurozone and also in Japan, you see that, and particularly in the Eurozone, you see that they're trading way under book value. I mean, we're talking about 30% of book value sort of figure, 40% of book value. So the market is saying that, Houston, we got a problem, sort of thing. The banking system will have to be rescued on higher interest rates. I would take that as a given. The problem is, how do you do it? It is relatively easy to rescue or to underwrite the system, as we saw with the Fed's action with the Lehman crisis. They can basically chuck money at the problem until the problem goes away. But what this involves is a massive expansion and a massive commitment to credit inflation, just to stabilize the situation. And under those circumstances, I think that we will see markets react by undermining the purchasing power of currencies and at the same time reflecting this in a higher gold price. But that's not the only problem. As I said earlier, the central banks themselves are deeply into negative equity. And the only bank which was sensible in this was the Bank of England under Lord King, who got a commitment out of the Treasury to underwrite any losses that might arise from QE. So that all the QE is actually put in a special purpose vehicle, which the auditors can sign off as, it's in there at par value, boom, because it's all guaranteed by the Treasury. So, but so far as I'm aware, no other central bank has actually done this. Now, just imagine the problem that arises with the ECB. The ECB's shareholders are the other national central banks. We have had, literally in the last 2 weeks, statements coming out of Germany that the Bundesbank has losses on its balance sheet well in excess of its equity because of the German bonds that it's been forced to buy under the various QE programs of the ECB. It has also got, it is owed by the Target 2 system about 1.2 trillion euros. I mean, it's a mess. But how do you sort it out? I mean, basically, it's quite easy to recapitalize a central bank. Basically, the way it works is central bank makes a loan to the shareholder. So that's an asset on one side of its balance sheet. And it comes back in not as a deposit, but it comes back in as equity. Voila, you've recapitalized your central bank. It's very, very easy. But how do you do this with a central bank that is owned by a multitude of national central banks? These banks will have to go, in most cases, to their politicians to get permission to do it. Now, can you imagine in the German parliament, these ignorant politicians trying to grapple with the concept that there are these huge, great losses, which are now on the balance sheet of the Bundesbank. The Bundesbank is owed 1.2 trillion euros through the Target 2 system. And the Bundesbank is asking not only to recapitalize itself, but for extra funds so that it can recapitalize the ECB. Come on. How's this going to work? They have set up a system which is almost designed to fail at the first hurdle, the first real hurdle of difficulty. And I'm afraid that's going to happen. I think the euro could well get wiped out by this. In fact, I can't see how the euro can survive this coming credit crunch. It is a very serious issue. Now, on that basis, you could say that the dollar's trade weighted and go through the roof. But this is not good news. It really isn't. I mean, the dollar could also sort of go down with it, but at a less rapid rate. I would love to see a way out of it. I would love to see the ability to kick down the can down the road one more time. But I think it's sort of getting to the end of that game. And I think if you can grasp that, I think you have to look at the positive side of it and sort of think, well, the whole situation is so rotten. It's actually impossible to plan our lives while such a rotten system exists. One of the possible benefits of a collapse of the current system is a new system which will allow us to progress our lives again. Now, I don't think it's going to be an easy transition, I have to say, and at my advanced age, I doubt whether I could really benefit from it. But, we've got children and all the rest of it. I'm sure you have as well, and relatives who've got to survive in this world. And I think it's terribly important for them that whatever comes out of this crisis allows them to, if you like, live, make a good living, progress themselves, which is really what humans want to do. Though I have to say, there's an awful lot of humans in Britain who sociologically don't seem to want to progress themselves at all. But you get the point that we're all in this sort of stasis. And actually, what you were saying about the U.S. residential property market, how that's now in a set of stasis, is almost a metaphor for the whole economy, for the whole global economy, or the Western side of it, anyway. Mm-hmm. When it comes to new forms of fiat currency, whether you sort of bundle it up in some wonderful technology which nobody understands or whatever, is immaterial. But it's just like the situation at the time of the French Revolution when the assignat was issued. And this was a new currency. And the assignat collapsed because they continued to issue it. So they came up with another wonderful idea. They came up with yet a new currency called the mandat territoriaux. That collapsed within 6 months. No, fiat is fiat is fiat. It doesn't work. It eventually collapses. And the other problem we have, of course, and you're mentioning, do we go back to a gold standard? Well, the whole of the current crop of macroeconomists would turn around and say, no, these are the guys who advise politicians. They have been weaned off the concept of sound money. And they're going to have to do some mental gymnastics before they get to the point of actually understanding what is required. This is not a problem to be solved overnight. Now, it is possible that in a real crisis, and the point about a crisis is it does actually tend to unite people towards a common objective. What we would need is a statesman, or we would need statesmen in our country, more specifically, same in your country, who actually understand the problem and will say, cut through that. That doesn't work. We've got to return to sound money. We've got to return to a situation where we get back under control, where the economy actually works for people. And that brings another problem, and that is that the governments have got to reverse what they have been doing. The whole ethos of government has been, it is there to do the business of everybody, whereas actually it should be the business of nobody. It's, governments are there to intervene And what they have become is they have become divorced from the true objective of representing and looking after the interests of the whole population. They now look after their own interests. A government is an autonomous body which literally just taxes us in order to survive. And it pursues its ambitions and objectives, ignoring us. The democracy in the West is effectively collapsed along with social values. And how do you reverse all that? You're going to need statesmen of some considerable ability to be able to do that. I just don't see where they are